Okay, let's jump right into this explainer and uncover how a deceptively simple technique can completely transform the way you learn English, making the whole process so much easier. Listen, if you've ever felt completely stuck between knowing a bunch of vocabulary in your head and actually being able to use it effortlessly in a real-world conversation, you are definitely not alone. Today, we're looking at a method that bridges that exact gap. You know the exact feeling we're talking about, right? Your mouth arrives late, the rhythm slips, and a word you literally knew a second ago suddenly feels way too big to say. It is incredibly frustrating. You can read, you can write, and you can understand native speakers perfectly fine, but the very second it's time for you to actually produce the language, your brain just seems to completely freeze up.
Today's agenda covers the fluency trap, what shadowing actually is, shadowing the wrong way, the science behind the method, a step-by-step guide, and finally making the language yours. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The fluency trap. So a ton of learners practice in a way that looks super active on the outside. Repeating sentences like a machine. But it does almost nothing on the inside because they're essentially just racing the speaker instead of truly listening. If you are just trying to keep up and spit words out as fast as humanly possible, you're completely missing the nuances of rhythm, stress, and meaning. You really have to listen with your whole mind.
As our source so perfectly puts it, speed without understanding does not build fluency. If you're only copying sounds without actually understanding the sentence, your mouth is working while your mind is completely asleep. Sure, you might feel busy and productive in the moment, but when you enter a real conversation, the words just won't be there for you because they never truly sink in.
Section 2. What is shadowing?
To fix this, we need to understand what this method is actually supposed to be. Developed by polyglot professor Alexander Arguelles, shadowing is not just casually reading subtitles out loud. It is a multi-sensory way to follow a native speaker like a literal shadow. You are integrating listening and speaking at the exact same time, matching the speaker's emotional tone, their pauses, and their rhythm. This completely bypasses all that tedious textbook memorization, which makes real-time speaking so much easier to grasp. By forcing your ears, your mouth, and your memory to all work together without pausing to analyze clunky grammar rules, it actually mirrors how children naturally acquire their very first language. You learn the music of the English language first. This automatically trains your verbal response time, making this an incredibly instinctual and frankly easy way to start producing fluid speech.
Section 3. Shadowing the wrong way.
Now here is where things tend to go off the rails. There are 3 major mistakes quietly killing your progress. First, if you only shadow for speed, you're basically just training yourself to panic. Second, if you fail to pay real attention to the shape of the sentence, like the stress and the flow, you aren't actually absorbing anything. And third, if you never take the time to use the phrases in your own conversations, you're just creating empty noise that stays trapped in practice mode forever. And please, whatever you do, stop trying to shadow an entire hour-long podcast. Seriously, sticking to 10 to 30-second clips is exactly what makes this technique so incredibly easy and manageable to fit into a busy day. It helps you avoid cognitive overload. You want a short, repeatable piece of audio that you can master deeply, rather than rushing shallowly through a massive chunk of audio.
Section 4. Science behind the method.
What's really fascinating here is the hard science proving why this works. The technique is heavily backed by linguistics, specifically utilizing cognitive load theory to engage your ears and mouth at the exact same time. By taking language in and producing it immediately, you build effortless, long-term language habits naturally, without having to overthink the grammar at all. And the results speak for themselves. In a Vietnamese study by Tran Van Ha, a massive 82% of students reported feeling significantly less anxious about speaking English after just 8 weeks of regular shadowing. Just think about that for a second. Lowering anxiety is half the battle. When you aren't stressed, speaking English naturally becomes exponentially easier. Furthermore, a pilot study in Myanmar tracking stress patterns showed incredible leaps in accuracy once students transitioned from blind repetition to mindful, text-assisted shadowing. For instance, one participant jumped from just 56% accuracy on their first try all the way to 91% on their last try. That is a massive jump in their ability to correctly stress words purely from this focused practice.
Section 5. This step-by-step guide.
So, how do we actually apply this in our daily lives without feeling overwhelmed? Using a straightforward 4-step process, you literally just need a single minute to run through this. First, deeply listen to catch the rhythm. Second, echo the sounds right after they speak. Third, shadow the audio simultaneously to build speed and flow. And finally, own the sentence, meaning you say the idea out loud without looking at a text or hearing the audio.
You can also level up your practice by splitting it into 2 distinct phases. Start with what we call pre-shadowing to strictly train your ears without the distraction of reading. Then, once you're comfortable, move to post-shadowing, where you use a transcript to perfectly lock in those tricky stress patterns. This sequence builds incredible phonetic awareness.
Section 6. Making the language yours.
This brings us to the final and absolutely most crucial phase, bringing the language into the real world. If you only copy the sound, you only get better at copying sound. You must retell the idea in your own words to bridge the gap between practice and true fluency. So, if you shadow the phrase, "I've been practicing every day," change it. Make it, "I've been practicing every day because I want to feel confident." You have to make the language yours.
If you're in a classroom or have a language partner, you can even do this collaboratively. This takes the pressure off entirely. It turns intimidating solo drills into an easy interactive dialogue, which actually makes the process of sharing stories incredibly fun.
By modifying the technique to summarize or paraphrase what a classmate just said, you build a cooperative environment where spontaneous communication really thrives. Techniques like using a half-folded paper force learners to rely on their spontaneous sentence-producing ability to finish the thought. And that is exactly what your brain needs to do out there in the real world.
The evidence is incredibly clear. The steps are brilliantly simple, and the science proves without a doubt that this works to make English easier. So my question to you is, are you ready to stop making empty noise and start building real fluency today? Grab a 10-second clip of a native speaker you admire and just give it a try. Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and happy shadowing.